Hey, Dad.
What's up?
Where was Solomon's temple located?
I don't know where.
On the side of his head.
Go to your room now.
Why? Every time.
You're listening to The Wayward Willis with Jon and Logan, where two atheists discuss religion, culture, and maybe some politics. If you're offended by blasphemy, profanity, or you hate fun, this podcast may not be right for you. And now, on to the show.
Hey, you.
It's us.
Calligraphy enthusiasts with slight overbites and hair the color of strained peaches.
I'm Jon.
And I'm Logan, a cartoon character.
This week, we're going to suspend the laws of physics, defy the laws of nature, and blow your freaking minds. We're talking about miracles.
So, what even are miracles?
Well, the dictionary defines a miracle as an unusual or wonderful event that is believed to be caused by the power of God. This definition covers everything from raising a person from the dead to finding your car keys.
One of those things is considered necromancy. The other is boring and insignificant.
Unless you're late for work.
I suppose. Then it's a miracle.
Miracles are tied specifically to gods and happen when the laws of nature are subverted in order to accomplish a task related to God's plan.
But not his plan to take over the tri-state area.
You know what you call a miracle that isn't tied to a god? Magic!
Haha.
Basically, when Penn and Teller turn water to wine, it's a parlor trick. But when Jesus does it, it's proof that Yahweh exists.
Yay.
I don't think that's because Jesus had more flair, though. It's probably because Penn and Teller weren't filming episodes of bullshit yet.
Oh, roasted! Oh!
Boom! Back in the day, before camera phones and the internet, miracles seem to have happened on large scales and fairly frequently.
And people weren't even able to tweet about them. What a shame.
Religious texts,
Not the smartphone kind.
or record these miracles and corroborate them with statements like, "And 500 people saw it," or "All these works were seen by multitudes."
The same can just barely be said about our podcast. Does that make our podcast a miracle?
It'll be a miracle if this podcast continues.
Oh.
I feel like the word multitude is religion's equivalent of Daddy Trumpo's countless billions.
He's got the best words.
If you know it's billions, then it's not countless, freaking idiot. At some point, it stops being billions and start being trillions, and also, you're still counting. It's fucking countable.
Rage much?
A little bit. Anywho, when we're talking about miracles in religion, we're talking about God or a godly person doing something that, by definition, isn't possible. Matthew 19:26 says, "With God, all things are possible."
Which, consequently, also makes them popsicle.
With God, all things are popsicle?
If it's possible, it's pops... Wait, is it the other way around? I forget how those commercials go.
I'm not sure. So,
Disappointed in myself. I'm sorry.
okay, so everything is popsicle, except, of course, making a burrito so hot even he can't eat it.
That is the one example you chose to represent things God can't do.
I like burritos?
I despise you.
Okay, well, that aside, there are plenty of miracles depicted in sacred texts, ranging from the creation of the universe to levitation. All religious traditions have a concept of miracles, but because of the specific traits of their gods, or lack of gods, the definition changes between them.
And also includes the word itself as well.
Oh, Becky! Buddhists, for example, don't have a god, but do have stories of the Buddha and various mystics being able to fly or read people's minds.
Damn you, Eve.
Now it's back on you. When miracles like these happen, it's because the person spent all of their XP buffing their enlightenment stat.
That's not a real thing.
It is, and no, I didn't have to Google that.
Of course you didn't, because you made it up, you dumb poser.
I never make things up.
That's
except
a
when I do.
lie. You just did.
Buddhist miracles are supposed to impress people and convince them that Buddha's teachings are legit.
Too legit to quit.
Ha ha! Too legit to quit. I don't know.
No.
Whatever. Oh, yeah, let's move on to Hindus. Hindus have a bunch of gods and goddesses who all do wicked cool shit, but they also have human mystics who are supposed to be able to levitate, heal sick people, and go without food or water for years.
Those are the level mini bosses.
I don't know. Given my love of food, it baffles me that this could be called a miracle. My version of this miracle would be the ability to eat all day, every day, without gaining weight or having my stomach explode.
If only, if only.
Actually, if you'll excuse me, I believe my burrito is ready.
Hot burrito.
Where were we?
Your grotesque eating habits?
Food. So anyway, much like the purpose of Buddhist miracles and, spoiler alert, every other religion's miracles, these Hindu feats of spiritual awesomeness are intended to validate the Hindu beliefs.
Spiritual awesomeness? Is that the official terminology?
Yeah, it's totally official.
Pixar didn't happen.
I got nothing.
Okay.
I got no pics.
Then I don't believe you.
Maybe some paintings?
No, it's not
Wood
real.
wood carvings?
No, I
All
will not allow any of these sources of evidence.
Okay, moving on. From what I understand about Islam, basically everything is a miracle. That's because they view Allah as so intertwined with nature that they believe absolutely everything that happens is caused directly by him, and everything is therefore a miracle.
Everything is miracle if you're easily impressed, too. Whoa, my body just sustained itself for like 12 seconds straight without my having to intervene. It's a miracle.
Yeah, your heart's beating and you didn't even think about it.
Yeah, man. It's crazy.
So weird.
It's God. It's God.
So, David Thomas...
The Wendy's guy?
No, he's a university professor who wrote the Cambridge Companion to Miracles, and he said, in fact, there has been more difficulty in deciding what is not miraculous, in reference to Islam. In a more traditional context, major miracles can only be performed by a prophet, like Jesus or Muhammad, in order to prove that they're a true prophet. Minor miracles are ones that only appear to and benefit an ordinary Muslim who is righteous enough to deserve it.
This is why magicians have always had the upper hand.
Because they're righteous?
Well, I mean...
Because they're Muslim?
Dude, they're so righteous.
Are there Muslim magicians?
No, it's because they can perform minor miracles.
But, I was gonna...
Get with the program.
But I wanted to see a Muslim magic show.
I'm sure that probably exists. I don't know
All
how
right.
entertaining it would be, but
I don't know. We'll have to see.
I guess we'll find out.
Let's move on to Judaism.
Okay.
So Judaism has a history of miracles in its text. Throughout the Old Testament, or Talmud, people like Moses act as conduits for God's power and glory and do things like call down a frickin' laser beam from heaven or start plagues or turn their staffs into snakes.
Now I'm just picturing everyone walking around with like big giant outlets for heads and God plugging the cords for a giant laser into their faces.
So this story about the snakes and staffs is interesting to me for one reason. It shows that Yahweh doesn't have exclusive rights to magic.
Or giant laser beams.
You might be right. But this story shows up in the book of Exodus when Moses is called by Yahweh to deliver the people of Israel out of captivity in Egypt. Pharaoh was being a dick and forcing them to build the pyramids or some shit, and Moses was all, dude, Yahweh said you shouldn't be a dick.
I'm sensing some paraphrasing here.
Nope, verbatim. So Pharaoh was like, Moses, quit being a little bitch. I got these slaves fair and square.
Yeah, definitely not verbatim.
Word for word. So Yahweh told Moses and his brother Aaron to throw their staffs on the ground because he was going to do some sweet magic on them, and when they did, the staffs turned into giant snakes. But not like Voldemort's basilisk. More like a full-grown boa constrictor, I think.
Well, that's far less impressive and magical.
Could have been a magical boa constrictor. Like, what if it was shooting laser beams out of its face?
All right, that would be much more impressive and magical.
Okay, well, that doesn't matter. Here's where I think it gets interesting. Pharaoh had some magicians who called on their Egyptian gods to do the same thing with their staffs, and they actually do.
I was going to make some awful joke referencing Dumb and Dumber about double miracling or something, but I don't think I have it in me.
Probably for the better. So this is the Jews' own book, and they could have been like, but Egyptian gods are pussies and the staffs just bounced on the ground and Yahweh's snakes ate everybody, the end.
Well, let's be honest, that would have been a pretty sick ending.
It would have, but that's not what they wrote down. The story actually admits one of two things here. Either Yahweh's miracle was such a lame parlor trick that everybody and Chris Angel knew it.
And he probably did because, as the producers of Supernatural claim, Chris Angel's a douchebag.
Or Yahweh's claim to be the only god is completely false and the Egyptian gods were every bit as real as him.
Or they're all just equally as fictional.
Bingo. I could be missing another option, but it's still funny to me that people who controlled the narrative made such a stupid mistake. In the end, Moses and Aaron's snakes ate the magician's snakes and then turned back into staffs.
Staffception? Or snakeception? Staff snaketion? I don't know. I give up.
Good. I wonder if because of the combined mass of all the staffs, Moses and Aaron had to walk around with like 20-foot tall tree trunks. I wouldn't. I'd be like, I'm fine without a walking stick. Thank you.
I think that just makes you a little pussy bitch.
I think that a 20-foot staff would be impractical.
Well,
Sue me.
clearly you don't understand the point of having a staff. So, shut up.
I think part of the point of having a staff would be to, like, actually be able to hold it and use it. Do you go walking with, like, carrying around a tree? I don't think so.
Well, maybe I would if I wanted to. If I had a magic staff that absorbed the power of several other staffs.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, good. Chalk this one up as a win for me.
Jeez. So Christians subscribe to all of the miracles in the Old Testament and add another 30 specific miracles performed by Jesus in the New Testament.
That's a subscription service I could get behind. Miracles by mail.
Like, by men?
I have mixed feelings about that.
Okay. Well, these miracles include turning water to wine,
like Doctor Strange,
raising Lazarus from the dead, feeding a multitude with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and coming back to life as a Rakshasa after 3 days in a tomb.
Was he just like chilling out in there? Was the miracle that he went 3 days without running out screaming like a scared little girl?
I actually think that he had an iPhone, and it was like when your little brother goes to the bathroom and spends an hour and a half in there and has to take the phone charger with him.
Wait. So he had an iPhone, but he didn't give iPhones to anybody else?
Well, yeah. Well, clearly, Jesus was just a huge dick.
Fucking stupid-ass plan. Fuck you, Jesus.
Yeah. Also, I think he did that thumb trick where he popped it off and then put it back on. That was a real crowd pleaser. So last week we talked about how Jesus gave his disciples the Great Commission before throwing a smoke bomb and disappearing forever. But he also told them that they would be able to do the kinds of miracles he did in order to prove to people that God is real and Jesus wasn't a big lying liar.
Spoiler alert, that never happened.
And he is a big lying liar. But examination of the Shroud of Turin showed no evidence of his pants having been on fire.
That was, unfortunately, pretty clever. Shut up.
You're just jealous. The book of Acts is supposed to be an account of the disciples founding and growing the church, and also to record the miracles they performed. For the most part, it's just vague accounts of how Peter Popoff
Spider-Man
prayed over someone who couldn't walk, and they jumped up and started doing a jig, and verily they were all impressed AF.
I don't know if doing a jig would be the first thing on my to-do list if I went from being paraplegic to being able to walk again. I would probably just want to, like, run really fast and be like, hey, everybody, look at me, I'm like a fucking cheetah.
Yeah, but I think that's just because you don't know how to do a jig.
That's probably true.
Thought so. So, before we had a scientific understanding, these stories were pretty common and miracles were easy to believe because nobody had an iPhone, except Jesus, and they were all bored and needed stories.
C-Spot Run just stopped doing it for them after a while.
I can understand that. There really aren't any cultures in this time period that don't have fantastical stories of miracle men and magicians, but you don't really see these stories persisting into the modern age. Now you get things like Jesus appearing on toast or the Virgin Mary showing up as a hard water stain in a leaky tunnel.
That's a miracle if I've ever heard of one before.
The religion most prone to giving these things significance, I think, is Catholicism. And the reason Catholics need miracles to be real is because their concept of sainthood depends on it. The rules say that at least one, but optimally 2, miracles have to have occurred directly after and seemingly related to the person's death in order for them to be canonized as a saint.
Like St. Nicholas. How else would he be able to deliver all those presents in one night?
I think that's a miracle in itself.
Exactly.
The current Pope, Pope Francis, has canonized 850 saints since 2013.
Holy crap, that's kind of ridiculous.
I know, he's been a busy little bee. And that's a hell of a lot of miracles that you'd think would have to be confirmed in some way. What's the standard, if any?
Well, that's only 850 pieces of toast in 4 years, which mathematically means approximately 1 piece of toast every day and a half.
Oh, I could definitely eat that much toast.
Yeah. Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be him. Like, it could just be anybody. Like, anybody's like, oh, this piece of toast has Jesus on it. And then you could be like, oh, well, that guy who just died was clearly a saint. Nailed it.
Well, my toaster imprints Darth Vader on every piece of toast. Does that count?
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes, That's a miracle.
All right. Well, the colloquial usage of the word miracle undermines the divine nature of miracles by redefining it to mean nothing more than something good. When a person is running late and can't find their car keys and they think they're going to get fired, but then they find the keys in their coat pocket just in time, they might say, "Oh, thank God, it's a miracle." They aren't actually implying that God reached down from heaven and put the keys in their pocket, but they're just expressing relief.
Unless they are actually implying that, in which case you probably should distance yourself from that person.
Or you should just hang around them and see what else God puts in their pockets.
Like a box of condoms?
Maybe like some gum. I could go for some gum right now.
I don't know that. All right, fair enough. Continue.
So in cases like this, miracle is a generic term. However, there are some uses of the word that carry insidious tones.
Ooh, spooky.
When an airplane crashes and kills 200 people, but one little girl survives, religious people will call it a miracle and praise God for saving the little girl.
Unless it's the Cash Me Outside girl. Then it's the devil's work.
I do not know what you're talking about.
Wait, you've never... Hold on. You've never heard of the Cash Me Outside girl?
I have no idea what that is.
Jesus. All right, you have a YouTube video to watch after this.
Oh, I hate YouTube. It's like the cesspool of the internet. I can't stand that place.
To be fair, the internet is the cesspool of the internet.
Touché. So of course we're all happy when even one person survives a plane crash. But maybe miracle isn't the word you're looking for here, and I'll tell you why. Because a miracle implies that God personally intervened for the purpose of accomplishing a task related to his plan. You'd have to acknowledge that God's plan was to kill 200 people in a fiery explosion. The idea that God saved one person but murdered 200 just so you could look at it uncritically and exclaim, "It's a miracle!" is horrifying and immoral. So we might not be talking about miracles if we had better critical thinking skills, which leads us into our interview segment. We're calling in some help with our enthusiasm for science.
Help me. I'm melting.
Bye-bye, Logan. This week, I'm interviewing two people who are curious enough not to be fooled by cheap magic tricks. They co-host the Science Enthusiast podcast. I'm talking to Dan Broadbent and Natalie Newell. How are you two doing?
I'm doing great.
About the same as I was the first time we tried to...
No. This is the first time. And we did not already try this on Skype, and Dan's AT&T connection did not fuck up repeatedly.
None of that ever happened.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about what we want to talk about, not devolve into talking about AOL and Angel Fire websites. So let's do this.
We would
I heard
never
talk of GeoCities intermittently.
Yeah.
Well, I would never claim to be a GeoCities snob, but, I wasn't on Angel Fire.
I know, not like some people over here.
I don't know anybody like that.
No, nobody.
So anyway, Natalie, do you think that Angel Fire would be considered rad in your estimation?
I probably, 13-year-old me would probably think it was really rad. 33-year-old me, I mean, probably not, but a lot of other things are rad. And yeah, I still use that word. I'm bringing it back or just keeping it going, just myself. I will always use it. I'll be 80 and I'll just be like, that's really rad. That's weird. That's weird as hell to even think about. So let's not.
I would say that rad is like the Mozart of cool.
Ooh, I like that.
It's a classic.
I really like that. And so the next time anyone's ever like, oh, I never hear anybody use the word rad, I'll say, well, it's the Mozart of cool. Go fuck yourself.
You're welcome. Okay, so as science enthusiasts and people who live in the real world, when we're talking about topics of supernatural and religion, how do you guys approach those topics?
Memes.
You approach everything with memes.
Next question.
So I would say supernatural and religion and all of that, I guess I'm going to lump religion in with pseudoscience, kind of like...
It's the OG of pseudoscience, absolutely.
Is. It's the, people just kind of really believing things without, evidence.
A reason.
And reason. And so supernatural things, ghosts and whatever else fits into that category, people are believing it without evidence. So yeah, I think that they do kind of fall under an umbrella of pseudoscience and irrational beliefs. Yeah.
Prepositions.
Yeah.
Right. So when we're talking about pseudoscience, then we are talking about like homeopathy and
how cyanide cures cancer.
Yeah, there's a lot of real dangerous pseudoscience out there, especially having to do with, kind of food and medicine or
putting bleach up the rectums of autistic children to cure them of autism.
Yeah, I mean, didn't that used to be called miracle mineral solution?
Yeah,
MMS?
I think it or
is it still?
Yeah, I don't remember if it's that or it changed. At some point it was still MMS, but they changed it from they might have changed it from miracle to something else because
miracles don't exist. I don't know.
Right.
So miracles. Yeah. Let's talk miracles.
So miracles. Let's talk about the definition of miracles.
So a miracle, it's something that happens like for which there's no evidence-based explanation, right? So nothing that's ever happened is a miracle. Is that accurate to say? Because miracles don't happen.
Well, except for the ones that the Catholic Church recognizes. Those are totally legit.
Okay, so what we're talking about is essentially time-based miracles. So depending on our level of knowledge at the time, anything could be considered a miracle because there are still things that we can't explain, and we're pretty darn smart. But yeah, if something were to happen like, I don't know, Jesus appeared on toast, and we had no idea why, given the function of a toaster, Jesus would have appeared on toast. That's got to be a miracle, right?
Well, and the other thing is God and Jesus, or I guess God is Jesus, is so, in his grand omnipotence, is so fucking smart that he thinks the best way to manifest himself is through a piece of fucking toast that's burned.
But guys, so here's a question about Jesus toast then. We have an idea of what we think an image of Jesus would look like. Don't we look for faces and things, and don't we look for, recognizable patterns?
Pareidolia.
Jesus is just a recognizable pattern. So, sorry guys.
But you know what? To their credit, at least he's brown on the toast.
There you go. Ooh. But what I was going to say is, if Jesus were going to appear on anything, it should be toast.
It should be toast.
Yeah, because he offered up his body for everyone to eat. So
when the toast has yeast in it and actually has flavor and isn't given you by somebody who molests you.
Doesn't have flavor?
I'm saying the Eucharist doesn't have flavor. Yes.
Yeah, they're just dry. Yeah, scale. But okay, so this is transubstantiation is an ultimate miracle, isn't it? So yeah, Jesus toast.
That's what did me in. Whenever my because I was raised Catholic, well, I'm using air quotes on Catholic because it's whenever my mom decided we would go, but I didn't get my first communion until I was 12, and you're supposed to do that level of indoctrination, I think, when you're 7?
I was in second grade when I got my first communion. Yeah.
So you were both Catholic.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what did me in, because I thought it was all, like, up until that point, I thought everything was metaphorical, because that's the apologetic they like to use whenever something doesn't make any goddamn sense. And then they go, no, it transforms. And I go, well, how does it transform? Well, because the priest reads this thing from a book. Well, how does that has words have any impact on the little wafer? Well, because the Spirit of God is there. Well, how do you know? Like, do you see it? Does anything happen to it? Because it still tastes like a fucking shitty cracker. I don't see anything happening. I see him pouring it out of this. I saw the bottle that he poured out of. I saw him add water to it. So, you got to stretch it out. You got to make it last a little longer. You got to water it down for the kids, since we're giving kids alcohol, and somehow that's legal. But anyway, you don't get me started on this. I will not stop.
I think we already did.
Yeah. So Catholicism is kind of weird with their practices, and you just have to believe, I guess, right, in the miracle of Holy Communion. And it's weird, and miracles require a lot of just extra belief, don't they? If you have no evidence for why something happened, but you just think, oh, because God. That's kind of the answer, right? To anything, to Jesus toast, or to, Dan, you have some weird story about somebody's leg. growing back.
The miracle of, and I'm saying this wrong, I'm sure. Calenda.
Okay, so
let's call the whole thing.
Let me just stop you right there. I have thoroughly enjoyed hearing you butcher that word 43 times.
Yeah. How do you say it?
I have no idea.
Oh, well,
This is your
you don't know
story.
I'm butchering it. It could be
This is
It's your story.
tomato, calenda.
Tell
No,
your
but
story of Calanda.
Every time you
Calanda.
say the word, you say it at least 3 times. So I know you have to be
because I
butchering.
want to emphasize to the listener. I want to let the listener know that I don't consider myself an expert on this. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Also, I don't care. But it was this dude who totally had his leg amputated in Calunda, who knows what it was, Spain this says 1640, and supposedly it was a farmer. I don't know the whole story because obviously it happened. Had his leg amputated. Then 2.5 years later, God was like, "Yeah, you get a leg back."
Yeah.
Miracle.
I'm gonna guess it didn't actually happen.
I'm gonna say he saw people getting money for not working and for being injured or mutilated in some way, and he managed to roll with his shtick for about 2.5 years, and then got caught and go, it's a miracle, And the Catholic Church is like, yep, good,
Yeah.
Verifiable miracle. And
Verifiable.
I'm willing to bet that he spent 2 years with a blanket over his lap.
right?
Probably. Yeah.
And I mean, it's just coincidental that iPhones didn't exist back then, and it's never happened again. So, I mean, kind of
It's
like
weird,
somebody
right? It just-
rising from the dead like a lich, and
Yeah,
Just
so
once in a lifetime
being an
thing.
army.
Yep,
Literally,
but
it's
it is really weird. But it makes a whole lot of sense from a rational standpoint when you consider that miracles in religious texts and miracles before modern technology are so very different from miracles that happen nowadays.
right. Like when did cameras get really popular, and then when did all of a sudden we don't have nearly as many reports of people being abducted or supernatural things, and all of a sudden when we get things like Photoshop, now we have all this other crazy shit happening. Sure, that's just a coincidence.
It could be.
Well, and do you remember there was a hoax or something with pictures of fairies? I don't know why
Yeah.
I'm
Oh
thinking.
my gosh, that's so old.
I don't remember
It's
this.
really old, but
Maybe
it
I
was
do,
these two young girls. They had taken these pretty cool looking pictures actually when you see them, and people thought that they were taking pictures of real fairies. It was actually, I think paper cutouts or something, but they were able to use photography to trick people and have this hoax of these fairies. And so
I think this is I think I found it here that the cottonly fairies. See, I'll let you take the stab at that.
Yeah, so that's a thing that was able to sort of happen and come up in the time of photography and a little bit more modern technology. But then at the same time, we now can look at images like that, or at the time, whenever they can be debunked, like the actual the evidence or the miracle or hoax or whatever, magic can be debunked. But everything in the Bible and all that old stuff before even just these, old school cameras, that stuff's just taken on faith because God.
And you have to, I mean, what it essentially comes down to is you believe in these biblical miracles because you believe in biblical miracals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
right.
It's really...
It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the art of the deal, which is the topic of another show.
Not this show.
No.
Yeah, so... when we're evaluating, and we can't really, obviously there's no way that we can verify biblical miracles or miracles in the Quran or, Hindu mystics or whatever else. They happened so long ago and we don't have any eyewitnesses and we don't have any kind of tests that could have been done on these things.
Just the way they like it.
Exactly. So now we have the scientific method and we have technology and we have very smart people who are willing to be skeptical about things and not just accept it on faith. So miracles have just dwindled in number, especially, but they've also been constrained in size. So now, when before you were having people raised from the dead, now you have Jesus toast. I mean, it's
right.
I was going to say, now we have the perfect amount of milk being poured into our measuring cup, and now we don't have to run to the store again.
Yeah, I know. There's an actual meme of that. It's just some ladies post on Facebook or something that was the right amount of milk needed for her recipe, and it was just, I mean, the words I think were probably sincere from this. I'm considering she's probably some old lady or something. It's a miracle. God is good. I'm being
That's
whatever.
Offensive.
I had the
offended.
right amount of milk. But that's what people will attribute anything to God. They'll attribute finding their keys to God.
That's my favorite.
But then it's like, no, you found your keys. Like that's just a thing that happens.
Well, yeah. Then why were they in the last place I looked?
Oh, but God led you there. I'm sorry.
Let me tell you something about places that you've looked. If nothing else, you use the scientific method because you said maybe it's in my refrigerator. Well, and you did an experiment. You opened the fridge and it wasn't there, and so you go, well, let's try something else because that hypothesis has been debunked.
It was God that made you think those things, though. Dan.
Maybe it was the devil.
What drives me crazy?
The devil hid the keys. God found him.
Right. And what drives me crazy, especially after tragedies like what happened, of course, Sunday night in Las Vegas, is anything positive that results from it now is a result of God. So we have all these first responders, we have all these just normal civilians who stepped up and were able to help people. I saw so many stories of people who were defending, were trying to help people get out of the way, and took a bullet or whatever, and where people attribute God to that, to helping, to somehow doing anything, and that's what makes me lose my mind, because we're taking away like actual amazing things that these otherwise ordinary people have done, and the struggles that these people went through, and what they overcame, and now we're attributing it to some asshole who caused the whole damn thing to happen in the first place.
Right. And if you're going to go the miracle route on this, then you also have to attribute it to the asshole who allowed it to happen. Right. And that is the person you're attributing miracles to. Right. So, and it really does get me. When we're talking about, mass shootings, and we're talking about natural disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes, especially poignant now, when, like you, it just drives me out of my fucking mind when people will see a telephone pole still standing in a devastated area that looks like a cross and be like, it's a miracle. No, it's not. It's a telephone pole.
No, yeah, exactly. But that's people are looking for that, where instead look for some way you can help instead of looking for a cross. Well, and they're a pile of debris.
They're looking for something. They're looking for some sort of hope, some sort of anything to feel better. And I get that, and I understand that, and I almost appreciate that, but I feel like it distracts from the actual things actual people do. No thanks to any sort of outside forces other than they're just good people, or they figured that if nobody else is going to help these people who are being shot at right now, then I might as well do that and save a fucking life instead of some asshole who's just upstairs jerking himself off watching everybody die. That's what I imagine God does whenever during things like that.
That's he's just when he furiously masturbates.
Just like, yeah, this is good shit.
No, it's it really is just a fucked up kind of thing to think that like right. A piece of bread or on a water stain on a wall somewhere. I think there was an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia about, or maybe that was a stain with like Mary or Jesus. I don't remember which one, but yeah,
like the toilet was leaking upstairs, guys.
Yeah, that this is what the power is being used on. I mean, they've lost the plot of the whole thing. If this is what people think they're wonderful God's doing.
That's what your God values and finds to be important enough to spend resources on. Then okay,
right.
Okay.
Well, and And I think that, so when we're talking about, the things that people do consider miracles these days, which is just ridiculous and sad, if we were talking about something that would convince us that a thing, an event was an actual miracle, what do you think? I think maybe each of you in turn, like, I want to get your thoughts on this. What would you have to see in order to qualify something as a real, actual miracle?
I think I think that's just an invalid premise to start with in the first place, because anything that we've ever not known the cause for, the reason for, that we've discovered, it never once has it been a miracle, or has it been a god, or has it been something hopefully at some point we figure out how the universe began. But right now, the evidence points us at the Big Bang, and the universe is constantly expanding, and it's even accelerating as it expands, which doesn't make any goddamn sense because it shouldn't be. But we don't know. We have all these things we don't know, but we're not going to just sit there on our hands and go, well, I guess God's doing it, because through the process of exploration, of looking for that answer, trying to figure out what the hell's happening here, there's so much innovation that happens, so much technology gets discovered, so much knowledge. I just don't understand why you wouldn't go looking for that, or why you would just be okay with accepting that as a valid answer.
You're not playing along very well.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, I'm trying to think of just a concrete example. So I'm going to go back to Dan's example that he brought up of the guy who supposedly grew back a limb. Okay, so say that was claimed to have happened. Okay, so this dude got his leg amputated and said it grew back. All right. I don't necessarily believe it because I didn't see it, but I guess maybe would I believe in something if I actually saw somebody get their leg chopped off and then a new leg grew back in its place? I would believe that that's a thing that happened, and I would maybe, I don't know that I would, but I don't know if I would be able to say it was a miracle because I don't believe in God.
Right.
So is it, you know
what I mean?
You
want to set up an experiment and see if we can repeat it?
That's right. That's my thing. Like, oh, well, can we reproduce this? Like, is this just some anomaly? But still, I think for me, the tricky thing is to even be able to consider the idea of a miracle. Do you need to already have a belief in God?
I think the answer is yes.
In what I'm hearing you say here, Natalie, and correct me if I'm wrong, then drawing off the 2 or so years that we've known one another, you want to go around cutting people's legs off.
Yeah, it's official. I've been just working on this in my mind for a while, and I just want to see limbs grow back because I think it's a thing that can happen. But yeah, so I think we've established though that we do think that there needs to be some belief already.
Yeah, because I think that if there is if a supernatural event is not tied to or attributed to a god, then I think it is magic. I think that that's the difference between miracle and magic, is one is a god and the other is magic. Which I think is possibly the reason why religious people get so upset when you call God a magic man.
Because do they just take offense to that?
In my experience,
they get upset because they've ingrained this idea into part of who they are as a person. So, and that's why, like, when you or I say things or criticize, the crazy belief, because I think it is a crazy. I don't think religious people are crazy. I think the belief itself is crazy. When people criticize that idea, they get so upset because they consider it to be a personal attack, because they think, well, now you're saying that I'm crazy because you think this thing is crazy. No, that's not at all what I said. You just have internalized this to be something that it's not.
Right. Yeah. So, I think that's really where I was going with that whole thing. Like, a miracle is just magic with God seasoning on it. Like,
oh, I like that. I like that God seasoning. I like that.
I have a question.
I don't want it, but I like that concept.
What is in the seasoning? And
I don't know. I don't think it's like special sauce.
Well, I don't want it to be sauce. It just sounds like it'd be gross.
I'm both slightly aroused and curious.
No.
Well-
but God doesn't exist, so there's no God special seasoning, so it's okay. Don't worry.
I'm just saying, keep an open mind. You don't know that there's not.
I think this bears out some investigation.
Exactly. For science.
All right, 2
For
votes.
science. Oh, God. I'm outvoted. You guys could go on a quest for God's special seasoning and report back to me about what it tastes like.
I heard sauce. I heard sauce.
Sauce. Maybe it's like the Rick and Morty Szechuan sauce.
Promised there was
That's
sauce.
what it is.
We'll see. They're bringing back Szechuan sauce for just today, this coming Saturday.
All right, well, now that we've outvoted Natalie, I feel like we're going to need to end on a high note.
Okay. All right.
But I wanted to have
Bring me back in. Bring me back into this.
I wanted to have a little bit of fun, and I wanted each of you to answer this question. If there were such a thing as a miracle, what real, actual miracle would you personally want to see happen?
Dan, you go first.
I mean, I think being able to just fly would be cool. Is that a miracle?
Yes, it would be considered a miracle in Hindu and Islam culture.
Well. I mean, I'm not doubting that Muhammad didn't fly on the unicorn.
I like your miracle. So you can fly. Your miracle. So okay,
But see,
hold
the question
on, guys.
then becomes how fast? Because how
Is it
fast?
like a
how fast do you
superpower?
want to fly?
Well, and
just
and
the right
then-
speed. Just the right speed. That's it.
But then you're going to have some skeptic
right.
come along and say that you're just manipulating gravitons. So
You're just falling with style.
So, but really though, can a miracle be like the acquisition of some kind of superpower? Like, what if I want my miracle to be that I can just teleport myself anywhere I want to go?
Granted.
Done. Awesome.
I mean, that
That's
would
my
be
miracle. I get to go everywhere now. My miracle wins over your flying miracle. So so then what is yours?
I'm asking the questions, not answering them.
He's like,
Oh, but come on. I like
my
to interview. Come on.
All right.
My show.
I want to know.
All right, my miracle would be that
No starving children in Africa. You are such a good person.
I know. See,
At least you didn't use something like personally indulging.
Well, no, but what if I teleport to go help people in other parts of the world? Boom.
Can you
Yes,
teleport food with you?
I can carry things with me. Yes, I can.
Okay.
My powers are astronomical at this point. So yeah, for sure.
So would you just be like bamfing around like Nightcrawler?
Yeah, I would. Bam, figure out. I like that phrase too.
What if my miracle was to have infinite miracles?
No, that's like wishing for more wishes. You can't do that.
Yeah,
I don't.
the
and
genie god will not allow this.
No, I'm
Yeah.
of the mind. You say
one.
any miracle at all. I believe that is a miracle. You
found the loophole.
You did not have an attorney draft up this piece of paper that
And Dan becomes God.
The social contract. I love it when people say social contract. I didn't sign anything. The social contract that we just entered and agreed to without me actually agreeing to anything.
But all right. What would your miracle really be?
I think my miracle would be for all infectious diseases to go away.
Well, I like that.
Like they just disappear.
But viruses
Oh,
are
that's
so cool though.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they're cool, but they can also kill you.
Well, I didn't say they couldn't, but there's so many. I mean, there's so many ways for you to die, and to quote Mother Teresa here, the beauty is in the suffering.
Oh, Dan, that's not a high note to end on.
Yeah.
Let's just imagine
So, okay,
delivering food to hungry people everywhere.
All right, I
with
changed my mind.
Superpowers.
I changed my mind, Dan. If we're talking about things that are going to kill you anyway, then my miracle is that T-Rexes come back.
Ooh, wow, we're going all Jurassic Park here.
Yeah, that
with
would
your
be
miracle.
rad.
But
Yeah.
life does find a way. That would be rad. That would be rad. I like how we brought it back there. You're rad.
Okay, so one last question.
Yes.
Gandalf or Dumbledore?
Dumbledore.
I really liked the original series a lot better than the remake. I don't really care for Star Trek Discovery, so
Oh, God.
Oh,
Ah,
man.
we're so sorry for making you talk to us.
Well,
was that a joke? I thought we were talking about
no, you were
talking
on
about Star Wars,
point.
right?
You were on point, Dan.
And again, just so that we stay fact based here, T-Rex was actually Cretaceous, not Jurassic.
Oh yeah, I
Natalie.
think I did know that.
It's
Well,
going to come out of your pay.
I've been known to be wrong.
The followers of this podcast require a very high level of accuracy and scientific knowledge from us. So you're kind of bringing the show down with your whole Jurassic Park.
Exactly. Let's go back and just edit out all the times where she's talking. And
you guys are just roasting me. My goodness. Thank you.
It's time that somebody else on the show gets a little taste. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation we could have off the air.
All right.
Thank you for having us, though.
Yes, thank you so much.
This has been a really fun conversation. I like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to, because I have a much bigger following than you do, so I want you to tell my listeners, my huge number of listeners, where they can find your very obscure podcast.
So we're the Science Enthusiast podcast. You can find us on Facebook. You can follow Dan's A Science Enthusiast page. I have a page for my film, Science Moms. I have Skeptical Parenting. Dan is on Twitter at A Science Enthusiast, and I'm
Sci Enthusiast. See, you're sending people to the wrong things. And
I am.
I can't find this guy.
Enthusiast.
Well, I never post on Twitter anyway. So
just
follow me on Twitter because cross-platform.
Yeah. So thank you for following us if you do. And
ScienceEnthusiastPodcast.com.
Totally yeah. Oh, yeah, that too. And because we're on Blog Talk Radio with our show. And yeah.
All right. Well,
in places.
I'm going to be linking all of those in the show notes for this episode. But I do want to thank the both of you for coming on and having a laugh with me. I've had a really good time.
Thanks. That was really rad.
We've been having a bad run lately with tragedy, and a lot of good people have done a lot of good things in their wakes. First responders, charities, and medical organizations have stepped up and helped so many people affected with the help of other generous people willing to give their time and money. We all need to make sure we're doing more than thoughts and prayers in this time of need. I've noticed a stark contrast in the reaction to the Las Vegas shooting between religious and non-religious people in the past week, and to say that the reaction on one side is less reasonable than the other is somewhat of an understatement. Daddy Trumpo this week said that it was a miracle the first responders were able to get to the scene when they did, and more people have stated that it was a miracle more people didn't die, as if 60 people is a small number. But these little nods to God leave me scratching my head at the sheer ignorance and callous disregard for human decency and action it really deserves. If you want to acknowledge first responders, who, by the way, deserve every bit of praise they've received, then do it without invoking your God. If you want to acknowledge the handling of crisis, then do it by recognizing the people involved. All you're telling me when you shoehorn a miracle into a disaster is that you've got a lazy, incompetent God who's indifferent to human suffering, and you're okay with that. You know what would have been a miracle? God stopping a horrible person from murdering others. Or even Republicans implementing some rational thought to policies directly tied to tragedies like this. Rational Republicans? Yeah, that would be a miracle. The only way you could have convinced me there was a miracle in any of this would have been if dumbass had fired his weapons and the bullets had stopped just past the barrel and dropped harmlessly to the ground. Maybe, possibly, even if he had tried to fire his weapons and they all jammed or misfired 100%. Even if we could explain that with a bad batch of ammo, it would seem way too coincidental to just wave off. But you have no miracle claim here. People died, and people were injured, and if your God is real, then he didn't give a shit. The fact that you even attempt to heap praise on this fucker tells me you don't give as much of a shit as you claim to have either. Why are we still talking about miracles during disasters as though we can accept that a God cares about humans, but not enough to subvert the Second Amendment? Why do people so doggedly hold to fantastical claims of intervention when there clearly was none? And why are they so happy to withhold a well-earned thank you from another human being who showed incredible courage and empathy toward other human beings, even against their own personal safety and self-interest? What's wrong with you? It seems like I've been telling you listeners every week to help out where you can, to donate your time and money to relief efforts, to be a voice for secular humanism when it's so desperately needed. I'm telling you again this week, find a charity, find a group, find a way to help. Because there are no miracles from heaven. We need to work our own. That's why you need to email, tweet, and call your congresspeople and tell them we've had enough thoughts and prayers and we demand definitive action. Making them understand that gun regulation, national databases of gun ownership, and broader access to healthcare with guaranteed mental health benefits are a must. I know we have 1,000 fights going on all at once, but we can't get discouraged or overwhelmed. The switchboard phone number is 202-224-3121. We can't rely on miracles. Random verse.
Random verse.
Random verse.
Random verse.
Our random verse for today comes from Mark chapter 16, verses 17 through 19. It goes like this.
And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name they will drive out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands, and when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all. They will place their hands on sick people, and they will get well. After the Lord Jesus had spoken to them, he was taken up into heaven, and he sat at the right hand of God.
All right, so something tells me that this wasn't so random.
Well, I mean, it's related, but it's random. I mean, it was just plucked out of the middle of the book. I mean, what did you want? Like a freaking talking donkey verse or something?
No.
Actually, we could have done that.
We should have. Anyway.
But we didn't.
So, I mean, this kind of covers all the stuff that we just talked about, honestly.
Yeah, it does. Now, coincidentally, or not coincidentally, nobody has ever actually done this. Like,
Nobody's
I mean,
ever picked up snakes with their hands?
no, I mean, they have. Actually, you know what?
Irwin?
That's a good point. That it
Steve
left
Irwin,
it
a prophet of God?
not
What
when it
was-
comes to stingrays.
Does that make him a saint? Saint Irwin?
I don't know if it does or not. But yeah, I mean, there are some sects of Christianity that take this verse or this passage very literally. And have you ever heard of snake handling Christians? Like,
I've heard of snake charmers.
no,
Same.
no. No, there are some extreme Appalachian Mountain type of barrel as clothes wearing
Long titty, no nipple having.
snake handling, poison drinking bitch. But no, seriously, there are whole entire groups of Christians that take this very seriously, and they will like get boxes of rattlesnakes, and when they are holding church, they'll like open up this box and people just like pick up these rattlesnakes, and a lot people have actually died.
What
But-
up, rattlesnake? What it do?
But, you know, this verse kind of gives them an out for that. Like, when somebody gets bit by a rattlesnake and dies, they can just be like, well, it says those who believe. So, you know, that person obviously didn't believe hard enough.
Yep, that person did not have the power
Of Grayskull.
Yeah. I have the power!
So another thing is there are a lot of people who have claimed to drive out demons, but you really can't verify those claims. I mean, it's not like you can catch demons on camera or like
Excuse me? Paranormal Activity much?
movie much.
What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say, boy?
Trying to say Paranormal Activity is not a documentary.
That's what you think.
That's what I know.
That's your opinion.
Well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah, exactly. Prove it. Give me evidence. Where's your evidence, bro?
I wasn't making an extraordinary claim. I was actually just being skeptical.
Well, then that's not enough.
Really?
Or something. I give up.
All right. Well, you know,
It's hard to pretend to be an idiot.
I don't know. I think you do really well when you're
Hey,
not trying.
Fuck you, man. Fuck you, man. You stupid man.
Oh, man. So the other part of this, where it says that they will place their hands on sick people and they will get well.
Is this about masturbation?
No. I was just going to say the pronouns are a little vague. So it could be that what they're saying is they're going
They
to walk
absorb
around.
their life force?
Yeah, exactly. They're like, well, you're sick and about to die, so I'll just borrow a little of this. They just
your
like
essence, sir.
they just take out their life force by osmosis.
Yep. They just fail a constitution saving throw, really, is what happens.
How funny would it be if they had to, like, tap their head with a straw like a Capri Sun? Just like...
That hits the spot, mate.
And then there's always that one where you're, like, trying to put the straw in, but you kind of squeeze it, and then when the straw goes in, it just, like, all the life force just goes everywhere.
Oh, my God.
All
like
over
that
the
stupid
counter.
Lady who was supposed to be handling my blood donation, and she poked me in like 17,000 different spots before she finally landed on my vein. And then when she pulled the stupid thing out, she didn't put the stupid paper towel down fast enough, so blood just splattered everywhere. I hate that lady. I hate you, blood donation lady. Get better at your job.
Maybe she should have just used a straw in your head.
Maybe. Fucking Capri Sun straw probably would have gone better than her stupid needle.
That would make you my Capri Sun.
No, we're done.
Oh, God
GG.
damn it. Good night, everybody. All right. Well, if you were going to rate this passage from a scale of 1 Capri Sun to 3 vampires, what would you give it?
I'm not sure how that relates, but
the blood drawing and sucking.
I'm gonna give it 2 20-foot tall staffs. It's an exception.
Where are you going to put these staffs?
I don't fucking know, man. Outside?
Oh.
Like, put a bunch of rungs between them and make it into a ladder.
All right, you
Ladder
do you, man.
exception. I'm done.
All right.
Good night. That's all, folks.
That's all, folks. Well, it feels like a miracle that we got through another episode. We want to give our deepest thanks to our patron, Gaytheist, who is getting extended interviews and outtakes, as well as some Wayward Willis swag. If you want to become a patron, keep listening through the end of the episode. If you want to keep your money, that's fine too. Like, share, and review us on all your podcast platforms to help us get noticed. Until next week, if you have questions or comments, please send us an email to podcast@waywardwillis.com. Intro music was provided by Austin Cologne and used with permission. You can find more of Austin's music linked in the show notes. This podcast is a media production of Willisware, LLC. All rights reserved.
This has been The Wayward Willis. If you liked what you just heard and you want more of Jon and Logan, you can follow us on Twitter @WaywardWillis, Facebook at facebook.com/TheWaywardWillis, or at willisweb.com. If you want to help the show and have a few extra dollars, you can donate per episode or per month on Patreon at patreon.com/wayward. We'll be back next week.